Hi YouTube, I'm Ali, welcome to the channel. So today we're going to be covering 5 fundamental questions I think need answering before you can take your game idea all the way to its first prototype. What exactly are those questions and why are they fundamentally important? Well, you'll have to watch the video to find out. But first, if you like any of these videos that I'm producing all about game design, then consider subscribing to the channel because every subscription helps. So question 1, let's start at the very beginning when it comes to these fundamental questions. Fundamental question number 1, what exactly is prototyping? Now I know that's a very basic question and it doesn't take a genius to go find out. I know because I went and found out and I'm no genius. But it's important because it forms the basis of all the other answers. Now, a quick check on the internet tells me that a prototype is an early or draft version of the complete game that you're trying to produce. On to question 2, which follows on very nicely from question 1. What is the purpose of a prototype? Now again, that sounds like a very basic thing to ask, but again, it's very important to call out. The purpose of our prototype is to test and refine each of the elements that make up our complete game. Now, what do I mean by elements? Well, if you think back to the game idea, our game idea is made up of 3 elements itself. It's made up of game mechanics, several different kinds of game mechanics perhaps, but game mechanics, i.e. how does the game work, the fundamental things that make the game tick. Wrapped around that is usually a theme. A theme is the thing that binds the game together and gives it, well, thematic reason. And then on top of that and surrounding it completely is that player experience. What do we want our players to feel? Is it a co-op game where everyone's tense? Is it a traitor-filled game where we're trying to work out who's doing what and who we can trust and who we can't trust? Do we want our players to be thoughtful and relaxed in their gameplay? Player experience, very important. Oh, I suppose, do we want them laughing out loud is also a very valid thing to ask. But the point is, the only way of testing player experience is to build a prototype. In addition to the core game, there are some other elements, of course, that you're going to be able to test with a prototype. These include game rules, game components, that means the cards, the dice, the little meeples you might want to create, the artwork, and the playtime or duration of the game. These are all key factors that make up your game and that will be tested by using a prototype. Now, quick word of warning here. Depending on the path you eventually go down to publish your game, the artwork, the components, even the playtime and the rules may change slightly. It all depends on what your publisher does to your base idea. If you go down the route of self-publishing or if you're just building the game for your own desires, then actually very often what you have in the prototype will end up as your final product. So the purpose is to test those elements and refine them. Now that should imply, of course, that you're going to be testing and then you're going to be improving. That's the refinement bit. And then you're going to be retesting. The whole point of a prototype is that it's an iterative activity. You're going to improve the prototype as you go along by refining and testing the different elements that make it up. Question 3 is where things get real. Question 3 is when do I start building my prototype? Now, I can give you a very trite answer here because that's what I'm going to do. The trite answer, the quick answer is you can start building as soon as you've got specific about your core game idea. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, what I mean is that I want you to be really clear on what the outcome of your prototype is going to look like, is going to function like. The one thing you can't dictate is how players are going to feel. That will only start happening once you've built a prototype and you've tested. But before that, you can definitely play with, manipulate, change the theme and the game mechanics, the things that make up your core elements of the game. Now, the challenge, of course, is that when I speak to designers, I'm often told that getting a mechanic to work right in their heads or on a spreadsheet can take months. Remember, to get to the prototype, we've got to have all the elements of a complete game. all the elements of a complete game. And right now, you're in the world of maybe just a game idea where you've just got the notion that you want to build something in, say, the Star Wars universe. Let's say your great game idea is, hey, wouldn't it be amazing if I built a game about learning to pilot a TIE fighter in the Star Wars universe? Well, that is quite specific, and kudos for you. But in that element, you're going to have to do some research about the different kinds of TIE fighter, perhaps. Maybe you're going to have to make up some mechanics to support that. You're going to have to build something up to get to your prototype. All of that is happening way before you start taking something to then go and play test with others. So you need to be specific to get to that prototype. Then you can build it. If you know the answer to question 3, then the answer to question 4 isn't that difficult. Question 4 is, how much time, effort, or money should I spend on my prototype? Now, in question 3, I talked about, or in answer 3, I talked about being specific. Know what the end result is going to be, know what your game's going to be about, know the fundamental mechanics that are going to be used, know the elements of the theme that are really important in your game. If you've done all that, then you'll know predominantly whether your game is theme-based, heavily theme-based, or whether it's mechanic-based. Now, what I mean by that is, if this is a novel theme or a theme that hasn't been utilized before, then you're probably going to want to spend a little more time on the artwork and the components, because those are the things that are going to best show off your theme. If you're coming up with a completely novel or quite involved mechanic, you're going to spend a little more time perhaps with the game rules, clearly writing those out and clearly being able to explain them. And again, perhaps some of those components. You might have elements of the game mechanics that are held within the components, and so you might have to have very specific components made. The driving force of how much effort you should give to artwork or components or any of that is fundamentally, I think, led by that thought. Is my game really all about theme and some really clever mechanics to back it up? Or is it all about this amazing set of mechanics and a theme is in effect bolted on? Or maybe it's an abstract and doesn't really matter. Now, all of that I say with a caveat, and that is that your publishing route will also dictate how much time and effort you should spend on your prototype. Even if your game is very heavily theme-based and you do feel you want to put in some effort into your artwork and your components, know that a publisher may well come along and completely change the style. So you've got to be aware of that possibility. If you decide to go down the route of self-publishing, or in fact you're building this game just for yourself and your friends, then actually maybe you can just go at it. Spend the money you want to spend the time you want to spend the effort you want to spend to get to your prototype. But remember our fundamental question 2, which was that the purpose of the prototype is to be able to test each individual element that make up your complete game. So what you should be ending up with there is the complete game. Question 5 is the hardest one for me to answer, because I'm no longer going through a proven, tried, tested, mechanical, scientific approach. Suddenly, I'm into the world of art. I'm into the world of what feels right, of what feels balanced. Question 5 is, when do I stop prototyping? Now, the trouble with this is that I have not had a definitive answer. How do I know that my game is complete enough? We can talk about the fact that we've fulfilled the player experience, we're playing to the playtime we want to, the components seem to represent the items they want to. I've now reached a point where I can say my game's complete. But player experience, which again is one of the most fundamental things about this whole game design malarkey, is really hard to define. And because of that, knowing when your game is complete is not a straightforward answer. Your prototype will continue. That is, that element of testing, refining, will complete until you and your player group say it is. Now, how long typically is that? Well, it totally depends on the game. I've spoken with people who have said a simple card game has taken months and a complex board game has taken years. What I am clear about is that it isn't short. A good game will require a predominantly extended period of prototyping and playtesting. So folks, those are my 5 fundamental questions answered. I hope you understand the answers and I hope they make sense to you. I hope, in fact, that they agree with your own thinking. If they do, or even if they don't, why don't you let me know by dropping me a comment in the comments below. If you like this video, then please give me a thumbs up. And if you like to see more of this kind of stuff, the whole world of game design, then please, by all means, subscribe to the channel. Next week, I'm super lucky because I've been able to interview 2 really amazing game designers who have collaborated to work on yet another amazing game. I say yet another amazing game because it's the 3rd in a trilogy. Now, this particular game has raised over 1.3 million New Zealand dollars on Kickstarter. It's just completed and I'm super excited about grabbing a copy. Want to know more? Well, tune in next week, subscribe, turn on notifications, and you'll hear all about it. For now, though, as always, YouTube, take care of yourselves.